Hey everybody, welcome to the videos for my core plays for week 19 of the NFL season over on Draftkings. If you find this video helpful in any way possible, please leave a like. And if you're new to the channel, hit that subscribe button. It really helps me out and I really do appreciate it. And while you're at it, you might as well hit that notification bell as well so you don't miss out whenever I post new content. And YouTube tells me around 50% of the people who watch these videos have not yet subscribed. So if you're a frequent visitor to the channel or if you're just new like what you see, consider that subscribe button because it really helps the channel grow. And it's obviously going to help me out as well. And if you can help support the channel over on Patreon, link is down below for that. You get access to all the extra content that I put out each and every single day or each and every single week depending on the sport. Cheat sheet, notes, projections, spreadsheets, data sheets, Discord chat, all that fun stuff. And if you don't follow me over on social media, the handle's in the bottom hand corner of your screen. And I think that's it for the shameless plug. So without further ado, let's dive into today's video. Alright, so leading us off with core play number one, it's no other than Patrick Mahomes here at $8,000. Now listen, I am a huge Browns fan. I would love nothing more for Patrick Mahomes to have a very bad game, but I just don't see that happening versus the Browns pass defense. I know they're getting Denzel Ward and Kevin Johnson back, which are definitely major upgrades for this defense, but even when those guys have been healthy all season, they've still really struggled versus quarterbacks in the past this season, so I don't see why that would change here versus the best passing attack in football with Patrick Mahomes, Tyreek Hill, and Travis KELCE. The Chiefs also own the highest implied team total on the slate at 33.25. This game also features the highest over-under at 57 points. So a lot of points are going to be scored in this game. I assume a lot of points are going to be scored from this Chiefs offense, especially from Patrick Mahomes. So I know he's very expensive, but I love this spot, and I definitely want a lot of exposure to this game. But on the season, Mahomes, he's been excellent. I know I feel like he might have faded a little bit at the end of the season there, like the past couple of games, but still over 300 passing yards per game this year, over 2.5 passing touchdowns. Throws the ball in another 40 times per game, over 8 yards per attempt. And the matchup, this is where it really gets you. They're 25th DVA versus the pass, and they're allowing the 7th most points per game to the quarterback position, 22 points per game, over 260 passing yards, and close to 2 passing touchdowns. So love the matchup here. Again, Denzel Ward is definitely a big boost for this defense, but this game I would expect to be pretty back and forth. I know the Chiefs are 10-point favorites, but if the Browns can keep this game somewhat close or just really close, or if they just happen to jump to a lead by some off chance, I mean, Patrick Mahomes is in for a monster game here. I know he's very expensive. There's other expensive quarterbacks on the slate like Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, Aaron Rodgers, but the spot for Patrick Mahomes is perfect here, and they're a team that loves to throw the football, and the Browns defense, they're actually okay versus the run, but they really struggle versus the pass. We saw last week where Big Ben had over 500 passing yards versus them. Now, you got to keep in mind they were down 28 points in the first quarter, and so, I mean, it was just kind of a pass-heavy approach for the Pittsburgh Steelers, and the Browns were starting to play softer prevent defense. It seemed like early on in the second quarter in that game. So circumstances led to that 500-yard game, but I would not be surprised if Mahomes puts up well over 300 yards, gets into the end zone 3 or 4 times, maybe 5 times if we're lucky. Maybe does a little bit of damage on the ground. He is actually averaging 20 rushing yards per game. It's nothing crazy. It's not Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, Kyler Murray, but at least it's a little bit of rushing for there. And if he happens to get to the end zone on the ground, even better. So love the spot for Mahomes here, and even though he's super expensive, I'm going to be locking him in my lineups on this slate. All right, moving on to our second core play. It's actually a nice pairing option with the guy that we just talked about in Patrick Mahomes, but it's his tight end Travis KELCE at $7,100, and this is a smash spot for KELCE here. I don't think the Browns defense has anybody that can guard him. Their safeties, linebackers, they have really struggled this season, and those are the kind of guys that are going to be guarding Travis KELCE. And Denzel Ward is back for the Browns, which is a major boost for them because they can stick him on Tyreek Hill for the majority of this game. They actually had a matchup in a couple of seasons ago. I know things have definitely changed since then, but Tyreek Hill didn't have a huge explosion game. Now, I'm not saying that's what's going to happen again. I'm fully expecting Tyreek Hill to have a pretty solid game, but if I had to pick between the two, which I'm sure a lot of you guys are going to have to because it's going to be pretty hard to use Patrick Mahomes, Tyreek Hill, and Travis KELCE in the same lineup and feel pretty good about it, especially in cash games. So I'm going to side with Travis KELCE here because the linebackers, the safeties, they have really struggled for Cleveland this season, and they're just not going to be able to slow down Travis KELCE. They've been one of the worst teams in the league versus tight ends this year. Now they're facing the best tight end in football. They're allowing the 4th most points per game to tight end position, and they're 25th DVA versus the pass. And according to PFF, he is a massive tight end versus linebacker advantage matchup this week per PFF. And the numbers for KELCE this season are just elite. He goes toe-to-toe with the wide receivers in the league. I mean, close to 100 receiving yards per game, 7 catches, 9.5 targets, close to a touchdown per game, over a 25% target share, also over a 25% market share of the team's air yards. I mean, we should be looking at double-digit targets here, close to 100 yards, and he's probably going to find the end zone once or twice, maybe even 3 times if we get a huge ceiling game for Travis KELCE. And again, if the Browns can keep this game close, it should be a monster game for this passing attack. Even if it doesn't stay too close, they are 10-point favorites. I still think it's going to be just because Travis Kelce, Patrick Mahomes, and Tyreek Hill did a lot of damage early on in the game. So I know he's a bit expensive, but he's one of the guys I am certainly building around this week, and I feel like he's almost a must-play, to be honest, because he is just so much better than everybody else at his position. I'm not saying these guys are bad. Mark Andrews, Robert Tonyan, Jared Cook, Austin Hooper, Gronk, these guys are all fine tight ends, but when you compare their numbers, it's just so drastically different. Like Mark Andrews, 50 receiving yards per game, less than 6.5 targets. Those numbers aren't bad. When you compare them to Kelce, Kelce pretty much doubles those numbers. Robert Tonyan, 36 receiving yards per game, although he does score a touchdown, it seems like every single week. Cook at 33 yards, Hooper at 33 yards, Gronk just below 40 yards. I mean, those are okay numbers, but comparing them to Travis Kelce, he is just far and above the entire field here. And when that's the case sometimes, I just want to try to get that guy and just lock it up so I can feel pretty good about my lineup. All right, so getting into core play number 3, it's the first running back we're going to talk about, but it's Cam Akers here at $5,700. I liked him a lot last week. He was $5,100. Thought he was way too cheap for the volume that he could get. Now, it wasn't the greatest matchup in the world versus Seattle. They are much worse versus the pass than they are versus the run, but it did not matter. He still had close to 200 total yards in that game, did some damage to the air, got into the end zone. Had a very, very strong game. Not saying he's going to get 30 points again, but that price I feel like is just a little bit too low for a running back as talented as Cam Akers and the expected volume that he could get. And the key for the Rams to win this game is to keep Aaron Rodgers off the field as long as possible. So how do you do that? You just pound the rock with Cam Akers and milk that clock. And fortunately for the Rams, the Packers are pretty good versus the pass, but they really do struggle versus running backs this season. On the year, they're 28th, meaning they're allowing the 5th most points per game to running back position, close to 30 points per game. Also 18th EVA versus the run, close to 100 rushing yards per game, and close to a rushing touchdown, in addition to allowing over 5.5 catches, close to 50 receiving yards per game, and also 0.31 receiving touchdowns. So very good spot here for Cam Akers. I do worry that they are 6.5-point road dogs here, because if they do fall behind quite a bit, they might have to abandon the run. Now, Cam Akers is still involved in the passing game, so his floor is still pretty solid. We don't have to worry about Henderson, so it's pretty much just the Cam Akers show with a little bit of Malcolm Brown sprinkled in. But we could be looking at around 20 or 30 touches from Cam Akers, and at that price point, in a good matchup versus Green Bay, I think it's too good to pass up. So once again, he made the core play list, and I'm hoping he can have a nice repeat performance. All right, so moving on to our fourth core play, it's another repeat guy here. We had Cam Akers in the last week video. He made it again, and Michael Thomas. He was in last week's video, and he's making it again here at $6,700. I still feel like he's a bit too cheap. I believe he was around $6,300, $6,400, depending on what slate you were playing last week. Didn't absolutely go off, but he still had a pretty solid game, close to 20 Draftkings points, and a pretty tough matchup versus Chicago Bears. Things get a little bit easier here versus the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, though. And I know most of you are thinking that the Bucs have a pretty strong defense, which they do, especially versus the run. But in the second half this year, they really started to struggle versus the pass. Like, if you're looking at their numbers this season, like, they were near tops in the league versus quarterbacks, running backs, wide receivers, tight ends, you name it. But now they're ranked 21st versus wide receivers, allowing close to 40 DraftKings points per game and close to 200 receiving yards just to wide receivers. But they're 5th DVA versus the pass. But they've really struggled in the second half this season versus wide receivers. And Michael Thomas, he's one of the best wide receivers in football. I know this season he hasn't played many games, so the numbers aren't they're not that great. He only has 1 touchdown this year, which didn't even happen in the regular season. It happened last week versus the Chicago Bears. But the volume he gets, I think, is still do good to pass up here below $7,000, of close to 8 targets per game, close to a 30% target share, well over a 40% market share of the team's air yards. I know Drew Brees is old and dusty these days, so it's not the prettiest thing in the world having him throwing him the football. But that price point and a good matchup versus that Tampa Bay secondary, it's gonna be too good for me to pass up. And you get a nice discount off of Devontae Adams. He's $8,600. Tyreek Hill's $8,000. Not saying like projection wise, I like Michael Thomas over Tyreek Hill, but when you factor in the salary, I mean, he's what, $1,300 cheaper than Tyreek Hill. I think he has a decent chance of being a better point per dollar option than him. Stephon Diggs, it's very close. I just like the matchup a bit better for Michael Thomas. So at that price point with a team total over 27 points and a good matchup versus Tampa Bay, I like him quite a bit, and hopefully he can surpass the 18-some DraftKings points he had last week. All right, and getting into our fifth and final core play, it's the purple-haired man himself, but it's Jarvis Landry at $5,600. Now, this matchup is not good versus the Kansas City Chiefs. The way to beat the Chiefs is on the ground. They are 31st DVA versus the run compared to being 16th DVA versus the pass, but it's not the end of the world here. That's still mid-pack. But again, they just do struggle more versus the run than they do versus the pass, and they're allowing the second fewest points per game to the wide receiver position. So why do I like Jarvis Landry? This team runs the football more than they like to pass the ball, and it's more of a beatable defense on the ground. But the reason I like Jarvis Landry here is he has been pretty consistent in recent weeks. Plus, the Cleveland Browns are 10-point dogs here on the road. So if you believe in Vegas, which look, I'm hoping the Browns win this game, but I do realize this is a very, very tough matchup, and I would not be surprised if they are trailing late in this game. If that's the scenario, they're going to have to throw the football, and Jarvis Landry has been the wide receiver one for the Cleveland Browns. Whenever Odell went down, he has been the consistent option here, and we're looking at his recent games. He's scored 20, 16, 19, 11, 20, 31. The targets have been there as well with 8, 6, 8, 9, 10, 11. So I would not be surprised if he pushes for double-digit targets here. I feel like the price is just a little bit too low. He's a very talented wide receiver. I know he's not like a huge big play guy. I know he had a 40-yard touchdown last week. He's more of a possession wide receiver. That's evident to his ADOT this season. That's sitting at only 8.2. But his numbers this year, close to a 25% target share, a 53% weighted opportunity share, close to a 23% market share of the team's air yards, and close to 7 targets per game. I know the matchup sucks, but if you believe in Vegas here and you think the Browns are going to be trailing, I think Jarvis Landry could get close to 100 receiving yards, find the end zone, and get close to, I'd say, maybe 6 to 8 catches, assuming he gets around double-digit targets, and that's not that bad at that price point. But that's going to be it for this video, guys, so I hope it was helpful, and if it was, make sure you leave a like. And if you're new to the channel, hit that subscribe button. It really helps me out, and I really do appreciate it. Follow me on Twitter if you want, Pennell16, CPenn16 over on IG. And if you help support the channel over on Patreon, link is down below for that if you want access to the cheat sheet, the notes, the projections, the Discord chat, all that fun stuff. I cover NBA as well. We got NASCAR coming up in less than a month now. Then I'll have the MLB in a few months whenever that decides to start. But I'll stop rambling. I hope you guys enjoy the games tomorrow, and I'll see you guys in the next one.